welcome to the show. You know, you have a very illustrious background. You've done a lot of things, you know, ranging from being a restaurateur to a television director and producer and writer, to being an amazing musician and multi-instrumentalist. You know, the list goes on and on and on over decades. So tell us, if you would, where it all started for you.
Prior to 40 years ago?
Yes.
Because I just realized on the way over here that the television thing started a couple years after I graduated college. So I mean, it's 40-year anniversary already.
Okay.
So that's where I cut my teeth in television in Detroit.
Right.
Which I fondly refer to as Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've lived there, you can say that. I think you went through that with Nate Brown's interview.
Yes.
So that's where TV started. But I grew up in Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
A good place to be from.
Yeah.
A good place to call home.
Uh-huh.
And at the time when I was in college, you know, everybody wanted me to be a dentist. There were some dentists in the family,
mm-hmm.
and so I tried that, and then I didn't really care for I think organic chemistry was what changed my mind to change from the medical field. So
that's a little too heavy, huh?
it was a little too heavy, and then I explored optometry because it was a 2-year postgraduate program, and then it changed to 4 years. So I'm like, you know what? I just want to be a rock and roll star and a songwriter, an entertainer. I
mm-hmm.
guess kind of came. I was always a hot dog when I was a kid.
Okay.
You know?
You like the spotlight, huh?
A little bit. Captain of the football team, all that kind of stuff. You know, always the band leader or always the guy organizing, I guess.
Somebody's got to do it.
Someone's got to do it. So it came naturally to me, and through music and stuff, and really started playing a lot in college with a couple cats from Pittsburgh that were brothers, and they knew every Beatles song imaginable, and they had that sibling harmony going. So when everybody was like doing disco and funk and stuff, we were kind of like doing southern rock and what became classic rock.
Okay.
And a lot of original stuff.
Okay.
And we cut some records and stuff, and won Battle of the Bands and stuff like that. And so that was a lot of fun. And like I said, then that kind of transitioned into television, which is a whole story.
Sure. Well, we like to touch on this sort of a little bit of everything, but from a musical perspective.
Yeah.
Tell us about your DNA and your roots of that, and how that seed was planted.
That seed was planted early because mm-hmm. my mom was always listening to, you know, my parents were always listening to Sinatra and Nat King Cole. I remember exactly where I was. I remember the image like it was yesterday when Nat King Cole died.
Oh.
I remember exactly where I was sitting, exactly where my mom was. And we used to, I was fortunate to grow up in a middle-class family, so we had the country club thing going on. I mean, my dad was a really hard-working guy. My mom was a hard-working homemaker and stuff. And I saw, I think, probably the Monkees. The Monkees probably inspired me a little bit, and then subconsciously Dick Van Dyke.
Okay.
I wanted a job where I could lay on a couch, write jokes, tell jokes, play piano, and throw darts.
Wow.
But music started in 2nd grade with guitar.
Okay.
You can't tell by the way I play today that I've been playing that long, but...
oh, you do all right, my friend.
Thank you, Dante. Piano in 4th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And piano just became, there was this woman that she was probably 50 years old, but just seemed like, you know, the stereotypical grandma teaching piano, right? And I wanted to play this B3, you know, with the foot pedals and the whole deal, the Leslie cabinet and stuff. And I wanted to play pop tunes. I wanted to play 96 Tears. I wanted to play Red Rubber Ball, stuff like that. And she said, nope, not until you play this old rickety upright in the basement and play, you know, Mary Had a Little Lamb and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, kickball, softball kind of got in the way. And I don't like reading staff. So that was kind of like a deterrent. And then I was sitting closer than you are right now, away from a red sparkle drum set of a high school rendition of Gypsy Rose Lee.
Mm-hmm.
And just that whole stripper beat, you know, that got me instantly.
Gotcha.
And I turned to my cousin and I said, I want to play drums. And I started talking to the guy, and I arranged taking lessons from him, and
Okay.
told my cousin, I said, I don't care if my parents are going to pay for it, I'll pay for it myself. Right? He went and told his aunt, but my aunt told my mom, but lo and behold, I think I was paying the guy maybe $2, if that, $2 an hour. And he just showed me the fundamentals, and my dad got me my first kit, which I still have the snare drum.
What was it?
And the first kit was a Rogers.
Oh yeah.
So I kept the snare, and it's that classic black oyster pearl finish. And then I got a set of Gretsch, and it was like a white Buddy Rich kind of finish, even though he played Ludwig. It was that finish. And just fell in love with drums, man, in sixth grade, and still to this day, you know, I think, you know, if I could give advice to any young folks coming up, whatever instruments you're playing, learn how to play drums.
Bingo. Bingo.
You can relate to that.
Absolutely.
You know, that scene
Absolutely.
in Get On Up, I think, the James Brown movie, when he's like really just rehearsing the heck out of his band. He says, "What's that in your instrument, son?" Or "What's that in your hand, son?"
Everything's
Guy
a drum.
had a trumpet. He says, "That's a trumpet, Mr. Brown." I said, "No, that's a drum.
It's a
son."
drum.
You know, so it's as you know, bass and drums, right? I mean, counting is everything,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So I mean, that's advice for the youngsters. I think it's and piano, of course, because it's melodic, it's percussive, it's bass, it's chords, it's melody. You know, so the drum bug just kind of like stuck with me, and then I stuck with that all through. I still kind of messed around with guitar, started playing guitar a little more, and then keyboards didn't really come back into play until probably in that band that I was with the guys when I was 18, 19 years old.
Okay.
I was playing drums in a country band, so I cut my chops. First real, you know, outside of like parties in high school and stuff, and playing the graduation parties, and you know, once I was in high school, I think we started playing the canteens, the college canteens, or whatever they were called, the frat parties.
Right.
And then, like I said, cut my teeth on country music, playing drums every weekend, making the same amount of money that I'm making today.
And is this in Pittsburgh?
This was in Pittsburgh.
Okay,
This is all in Pittsburgh.
okay.
So yeah, Detroit didn't happen until 1980. I graduated college and went to LA. Again, wanted to be a rock and roll star, songwriter, and was working as a roadie for SIR, Studio Instrument Round.
Okay. By the way, academically, so you graduated college in '80. When what field would that have been? Was that in music or?
Okay. Yeah. So I gave up the whole optometry thing.
Okay,
Right?
okay.
Which was interesting because it's a visual thing, right? And I ended up in television. But that happened through talking to the counselors and stuff, and go, okay, well, business always made sense, right? My dad was a good businessman and stuff. So, and I ended up being able to do what they called a self-designed major. So I was able to take all the mandatory courses that you were able to take, and all the sciences that went towards that, and basically created what they call a self-designed major, majoring in music.
Sure.
And communications in the music business, I think, was the official title, communications in the entertainment industry,
Okay.
kind of thing. So it all worked out.
Okay. What school was that?
University of Pittsburgh.
Nice.
University of Pittsburgh.
Nice. So you transitioned from Pittsburgh.
I go to LA. 6 months later, I moved back to Pittsburgh. My dad was in the car business. One of his clients that he leased cars to owned a big production company in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
When I was in LA, I was delivering things to Mike Douglas' show, Tonight Show, Solid Gold, Tony Tennille, Merv Griffin, all those shows that were Solid Gold, I think. And I remember wheeling a Fender Twin into the Tonight Show and just looking and going, oh my God, this is like so small. How do they make it look so big?
With all those cats in the band.
Yeah, and they were like crammed in a space like we are, right? But it looks so big on TV, right?
Yeah,
But those
yeah.
guys were like right elbow to elbow. And just I was fascinated with, okay, how can they make something so small look so big on TV? And so I had an opportunity to do that. That didn't come through. That was really kind of like demoralizing because I left sunny California back to Pittsburgh on a cold December, January day or whatever, and this guy never came out of his office. I sat there in a three-piece suit for like 3 hours.
Okay.
And finally he sent his assistant out They walked me around the building, and they hired me to unload a semi by myself.
Okay.
I'm like, I was doing this in LA. I don't need to do this now. One thing led to another. I went to work for my dad, and this guy, Saul Frank, he kept telling me, we were jockeying cars from one building to the other. People would buy a new car, we'd get it rust coated and undercoated and rust proofed. And so I was a car jockey. And he said, talk to my son. He's a big shot in Detroit. I'm like, I don't want to go to Detroit. You know, I was 22 years old, 23 years old, whatever. Lo and behold, I go to Detroit. I met with Alan Frank, who was my mentor.
Okay.
And along with Henry Maldonado, who I still stay in touch with to this day. And Detroit was just cool, man, because it was like I learned everything that there was to learn about television production in the first couple years that I was there. I went there to produce an Easter Seal telethon, so it was live TV. And Detroit was the pinnacle of how the local markets did the Easter Seal telethon. Went to this convention in Vegas, and everybody's saying, you know, all these stations from around the country, do it the way Detroit does it. Do it the way Detroit does it. So we were fortunate. You know, there's a brand new building that I moved into, where the station moved into when I first started, and it was like 5 of the happiest, most productive, most fun years of my life. Everybody we worked with was like, you know, like the musicians we hang out with.
Sure.
You know, it was like family.
Sure.
You know,
it was fun.
It was a lot of fun.
Okay.
And still to this day, it's like I haven't had a job since then, other than playing music and stuff, but in terms of a job and television production or whatever, that was so exhilarating, but so much fun to look forward. You look forward to getting up and going to work. You know, and I don't know if too many people can say that. You know, it's and again, advice for kids, I guess, is do something you love doing.
Yeah.
You know, if you love playing music, play music, man, at whatever level, because it connects the world, you know. I'm a firm believer in music connects the world anyway.
Sure.
So that's how Detroit happened, and then that job led to my job in Chicago as executive producer of Sports Channel, which was, you know, 87, I think now, and so basic cable was just kind of like starting to take off. You know, these regional sports outlets were just kind of blossoming, and 2 years later, back to LA.
Okay.
You know, so Pittsburgh, LA, Pittsburgh, Detroit, Chicago, LA, San Diego, LA, San Diego. So
just traveling, traveling man.
I'm not going anywhere now.
Well, you know, I think that's cool, you know, because I talk often about the ability for some of us to be able to reinvent ourselves. And I think there are certain types of skills that are very transferable. You know, whether you are, you know, behind a camera or whether you are on stage or a band director or an arranger, there's a certain amount of business within everything that we do. And having a left and right brain, being able to sort of pull it together, and I use this example of being a drummer where all your limbs are working, you know what I mean? You have to sort of be on top of everything. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, you know, obviously, you know, there's the 2 and 4, right, or the 1 and 3, or whatever. But it's like all the counting in between and breaking down 1, 2, 3, 4, breaking that down into 16 notes, 30-second notes, or whatever, and then just splitting your brain. You know, and the really good guys can do it efficiently, where they're just keeping, you know, something going with their foot over here, and then they're doing something else over here, and then but they're still able to do this and then change it to, you know, whatever.
Gotcha.
and come back around. You know, the whole right brain, left brain thing, I always give credit to my mom for the creative and my dad for the business sense. And I was able to exploit that in Detroit because it was, as a producer, I was a creative producer, but at the same time I was the nuts and bolts guy managing every penny and every dollar of the budgets, because they were local budgets. Even though we did nationally syndicated product out of that station, it was still, you know, they were tight budgets. So you kind of like figure out along the way how to maximize the dollar and just really be creative in the process. You know, and the whole thing about transference of skills, editing audio, those years where I was playing in the bands through college and stuff, we had our own 4-track studio, multi-track and stuff. We were bouncing tracks and just
4-track and bouncing.
4 tracks.
Those
yeah.
days are way. It was very different now, aren't they?
Yeah, man. I showed my son a reel-to-reel now, and he's like, "Whoa!" You know. And I still have a lot of those master tapes and stuff, but becoming a television producer and sitting in the edit bay, the transference of skills of editing audio editing video became very natural to me, because it was like, okay, I just dumbed it down, right? It's just like you're cutting audio, but you're using pictures.
Okay.
You know, you're using video. So all that, you know, still to this day, I'll sit there and rock stuff by a frame back and forth until it's right, you know?
Sure. Gotcha. Of the instruments that you play, okay, and you've mentioned a few, starting with the guitar, okay, then to piano,
yeah,
then to drums,
yeah.
Okay. Now I've heard tell you've recently sort of been picking up the bass.
I have.
Tell us about that.
Okay. I don't know if you can see here. My arms are a wreck, as you know. I always wanted to play bass, but I guess not enough to like want to learn how to play bass as a bass player.
Okay.
So I had an opportunity to play with Doug Allen,
the sax man.
We'll talk about sax man, piano man. He's my dueling piano partner. I do a dueling piano show, which we'll talk about.
Okay.
But I had an opportunity to play bass, and it's like, okay, I know these songs, right? And he's like, so when do you want to audition? I'm like, audition, come on, Doug, let's just do it, right? So 2 days after he said that, I'm like, okay, I know the song. So we were kind of like looking at the list, and then a last minute gig came up, and he said, you're on bass. I said, okay. It was a disaster. I mean, it was okay, you know, we got through it, but I wasn't playing the bass parts. I was playing the song, but, you know, bass, I've come to find, is a very melodic instrument.
It can be, yes.
You know, and the cats that I talk to and bass players that I talk to, the common denominator was, yeah, play the one, lock in with the kick on the drummer. Yeah, okay. But if you really want to study what's going on, listen to Paul McCartney. You know, listen to these guys that play melodically, so you can figure out the passing notes and all that stuff that makes sense. So I got a crash course in it. After that gig was a disaster, I was determined to make it work. So I just really buckled down and start listening to the actual parts and looking at YouTube videos and just trying to figure out stuff. You know, I'm old school, because when we were younger, we would just, you know, rock the record player back and forth, right? Would rock the needle and stuff, or try to slow it down, but then the pitch would change, you know.
Sure.
Just kind of like just listen to it over and over and over again until you get it, right? So there was a gig on the books for like 10 days out and stuff, and I just, you know, I wrecked my hands, just because I played every day.
It's a lot of endurance,
you know, and I had a lot of pressure on me to, like, Monday was rehearsal with the full band, so I had to get ready for that. Then I had 4 days to refine all that for the gig. And long story short, pat on my own back, I nailed it.
There you go.
And it was cool. And now I'm just in love with the instrument, because, you know, it's funny. And if I would have started way back when, you know, because in junior high school when I was the drummer, right, could never find a bass player, right? Bass players are always like really hard to find for whatever reason. It's like a stereotypical joke.
They're
right?
busy. They're busy.
That maybe because they're busy, or no one wanted to play it. People wanted to play guitar. You know, everybody wanted to play guitar, and then the guitar player would play drums, but he would play bass, but he would play bass like a guitar player. It doesn't work.
It's a big difference.
It's a really big difference, and it's just it's mind-boggling, because your hands, you know, you're playing bass with your left hand, you're doing this, you're playing guitar, and you know the song, but then when you go, okay, now, it's like, why is it so foreign? So I just kind of like dumbed it down and go, okay, start at the beginning, you know, study James Jamerson.
There you go.
Motown.
That's it.
And so that's kind of what I did, but it was like learning 50 songs. You know, it was like a 4-set gig, so it was like whatever, 14 songs, 12, 14 songs a set. And so I still just listen to, you know, we have some more gigs coming up. I've done another one since then. We played last night. And still I just kind of like fumble around a little bit, but that's the only way, you know, it's like you got to fall on your nose.
And you got to start somewhere. Well, that's wonderful. That's wonderful to be able to do all of that And you know, it's not easy because every instrument has their own mindset, you know, and sometimes it can be difficult to go from one to the other. But from my experience anyway, after a certain point in time, it does become one thing. You know, at least juggling two instruments, it sort of becomes one, where you're doing the same thing on each instrument, just sort of doing it in a different way. You know, but as we talked about earlier, we're all keeping time. All keeping time.
And I'm approaching bass like it's a drum.
There you go.
You know, and some of the stuff we did last night after you left, it was like, okay, it's like be percussive. We were doing things with, I think Doug was playing bass at one point, and Frankie was playing the other keyboard, and I'm playing, and then I just kind of like start doing something different. It's like, wait a minute, I'm the drummer here. You know, I have to keep this going. This is my responsibility, right?
Absolutely.
So yeah, I'm having a lot of fun with that, and like I said, it's. And I think probably because, you know, guitar, piano, drums, harmonica in 7th grade, you know, making noise with a saxophone, I like to mix it up. You know, I'll get up, I'll play piano in the morning with my cup of coffee or whatever, and then I'll start playing some bass, then I'll jump on drums throughout the day or guitar, you know, and working as a solo artist, you know, playing restaurants, country clubs, whatever, parties. It gives me the opportunity to pick and choose. If there's a piano there, I'll play a piano. If it's a complicated load-in, I'll just put the guitar on my shoulder and you know, keep it simple.
Sure.
And be able to offer both to the client, you know, or a full band lineup or whatever. So
okay,
that's good.
Let me ask you this, and I think I already know the answer, but I'm going to ask you anyway. If you had to choose between one instrument, and it only had to be one, what would it be and why?
Wow. I would say piano.
That's what I was going to think.
I'd go back to piano, and because of what I said earlier, the percussiveness of it, the ability to play melody and chords, and the percussiveness.
You can do it all.
And the wide range of you know, the sonic range of it. And yeah, I think that's for composing or for writing.
Okay.
You know. If I had to choose. Okay.
Do you have a favorite piano player, someone that you sort of have a sort of a hero?
Leon Russell.
Okay.
Leon Russell. You know, all the other ones kind of fall in line, but Leon, and I had the pleasure of meeting him right here at the La Paloma Theater. I walked him from the bus to the stage just to be able to see the show for free. And I just always admired his soul. You know, his soulfulness.
Sure.
I kind of sing like him a little bit, so I think those influences kind of came through. And then all the honky tonk stuff, and you know, Nicky Hopkins, Ian Stewart, you know, with the Rolling Stones. Chuck Leavell, who's with the Rolling Stones now, he was with the Allman Brothers, and then Sea Level was his own band. Now doing the dueling piano show, of course, you have to play Elton John songs, you have to play Billy Joel songs, but I never really looked at them as piano players that I admired for whatever reason.
Okay.
You know, maybe because when their music was popular, I was playing drums.
Okay.
You know, and just really didn't pay that much attention to it.
Sure.
You know.
Okay. One thing that we haven't really touched on, let me ask you a little bit about, is your segue into the restaurant business, because you've run a few restaurants that I've known of, and in any industry we have you know, our peaks and our valleys, but at that point, tell us about going from television or being a musician to actually running a restaurant. How did that happen, and what was your training to even make that segue?
Wow. I didn't have any.
Okay.
In terms of the restaurant business as a food business.
Okay.
Had some retail business along the way. Worked at Guitar Center for a minute, so I had, and that was like my only retail job. You know, it was either television production or not.
Okay.
And I came about it because the television industry changed. I was doing at the time a lot of single camera, this kind of stuff. I was talking to the you know, artist or celebrity or corporate mucky muck or whatever, and that kind of dried up because of the technology.
Okay.
You know, it used to be, you know, a camera guy with a big camera on his shoulder or on sticks, you know, an audio guy, If we were hanging a backdrop or had more elaborate lighting, we had a grip or a gaffer type person. So it was always like at least a 3-man crew: the producer, director, the camera operator, and the audio guy. Well, that became, that became a cell phone, or that became, a little camera. So the work dried up. Plus, I was down here, and I was getting calls, but it was kind of like few and far between. The clients either were older, retired, unfortunately passed away, and the technology.
Okay.
So all that kind of like just made the industry change for me.
Right.
Plus it's like you're getting up in age. It's a young man's game. It really is. It's probably one of the most age discriminating businesses in the world.
It's a high demand.
It's
high demand.
So I got into the restaurant business from the entertainment side. I befriended a guy that had the restaurant experience. So we got involved in I ended up buying Tuscany.
Okay.
But the reason I bought it was because it had a separate banquet room, and I had the vision of making that a showroom, and did. And as you know, we were doing, Grammy award-winning artists there. We were doing the Sunday jazz brunch things. I was doing the jam sessions, and we had probably 9 music slots a week.
Yes.
Seven nights a week, plus Saturday and Sunday brunch.
Okay.
That folded, sadly, and I was still passionate about it because of the entertainment side. The music part worked.
Okay.
Dinners kind of worked. Lunch was tough to get. If you're in the restaurant business, you got to have a steady lunch and a busy lunch, and that place never really had it other than the first 10 years it was in business, and that was a long time ago.
Okay.
So I transitioned out of that, trying to save that business. I was looking for investors and stuff, and one of the customers, again, my point of music connects the world. A guy that came in the tail end, the last couple months of Tuscany, this guy came up to me, and he was coming every Thursday night when I was doing the jazz jam, which then kind of turned into a jazz blues jam.
Remember that.
So when it transitioned to more of a blues thing, he approached me and said, "Would you mind if I paid for an authentic jazz trio to come in?" I'm like, "Sure." Money was tight. It's like this guy was willing to pay cats out of his pocket, and he brought in Mikan Slatovich, which is someone that you could interview maybe. He's just one of the most talented jazz pianists in town, world class, kind of guy that when you watch him play, you say to yourself, "Why am I even playing?"
Right.
Right. And no matter how much I practice, I don't know if I'll get to that level. And anyway, Martin was just a sweetheart of a guy. He has since passed away.
I'm sorry to hear that.
And he, through his love for music, we got to talking, and he was going to invest to save Tuscany. And I said, "No, this deal's too much of a mess. It's too messy. Let's go I'll find something else." Lo and behold, my son, a friend of my son, who plays professionally with me, been playing before he could walk. This guy told me about a building that was for sale, or a restaurant that was for sale, and so I called this woman and put the deal together for Wildwood. Okay. And basically spent all of 2017 refurbishing that building. And coming up with the name, coming up with the logo, coming up with the whole thing. And again, the reason I wanted it was because it had a separate banquet room. Okay. And the banquet room was not being utilized. And I told the woman who owned the building, who was selling the business, so here's what I want to do. She already had a deal on the table. There was a deal being signed the next day. Okay. And she blew that deal out of the water to take our deal. Wow. And so refurbishing the building took a lot more work than we thought. It was, some problems with just stuff that you run into, kitchen stuff, gas lines, all that stuff, getting through the checklist with the health department and all that. We got through it. We opened up. 4 months later, Martin passes away. Ooh. And his son didn't want to keep it going. So long story short, that room closed during COVID.
As many restaurants did
as
in that
many
period.
did, and John, who's
Too
the
many.
managing partner there, you know, he was my wine vendor at Tuscany, and he was always sponsoring the Christmas concerts and the stuff in the showroom. We would do, you know, the jazz brunches and stuff. He would come on and pretty much sponsor those with the wine and wine tastings and things like that. He came into Wildwood one day looking for work, you know, saying, I'm no longer with the wine company. I said, start tonight, John. You know, so he came back and he was bartending and serving, and anyway, he's the managing partner now.
Okay.
And so about a year ago, almost to the day, COVID was kind of lightening up a little bit, and I said, let's get the room running. You know, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to start producing shows in here again. So we basically rebuilt the room, you know, rehung the theater fabric and put the stage back in and stuff like that. So that's where I'm hosting the Pro Case first Wednesday of every month, and doing the dueling piano shows there
And that is again at Wildwood.
in Wildwood.
Wonderful. In Vista, California.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Other than that, what are you working on these days artistically other than Wildwood? Anything else around town, or
Besides bass every day? Well, there's the jam the first Wednesday of every month. There's a dueling piano show now. Generally the second Friday. We're trying to achieve that consistency and train the patrons in terms of like, this is what's happening. So the dueling piano show is with Doug Allen, who's you know, recognizable San Diegan artist with the Mardells. So I'm playing bass with the Mardells now, which is cool.
Okay.
And then we have a show monthly at the Aquarius Bar.
Okay.
In Mission Bay. So that's fun. I mean, you know, that show is a lot of fun, because throughout my television, again, going back to television, I did, you know, Easter Seal Telethon, then a music competition show for 4 years, and then sports, live sports, but I wanted to get back to music.
Okay.
You know, again, it's like my attention span. You know, I'll dive into something, but then if I'm just doing sports, like, no, I want to do comedy. You know, I want to do some comedy, and ended up, you know, the guy that Curtis, who I worked with in Detroit, went on to work at BET. So then we hooked up again in LA, and that's how the whole thing with BET started. And I launched Comic View with them. So I was doing all this comedy and some music, you know, the music stuff at BET. So all that was really working. So all that stuff, and going back to the Dick Van Dyke Show, that comedy stuff that's in me is coming out now in the dueling piano show.
Okay.
So it's a traditional dueling piano show. You know, request a song, send it up with a $20 bill attached to it.
There you go.
You know, and if you don't have money attached to it, we're going to let you know that these are the rules of the game, and this is how it's played, folks.
Greenbacks.
And we're able to take, there's certain things that we have kind of like you know, just little gags and one-liners and stuff, but there's a lot of improvisation that comes out of it. And Doug's a really funny guy.
Yes, he is.
So we're able to take that, you know, be it slapstick, be it just old gags, you know, and then just the music, and make the music good. And what we're doing, you haven't seen the show, I don't know if you've seen any clips of it, but you talk about, you know, using all the limbs and stuff when you're playing drums. We have a kick, and well, Doug has 2 drums under his piano, and he plays backwards.
Okay.
So he plays with the kick with his left foot, and then the snare drum with his right foot.
Okay.
And for him, it makes sense because he's playing left-hand bass, but he's not a drummer.
So he doesn't understand.
So I tried doing that, and
where the
it's
one
like,
should be here, not there.
You talk
it's upside down.
Yeah, you talk about trying to figure that out. So I did. I have a kick under my piano, and I have a hi-hat with my left foot, and then a snare drum, and then a ride crash. So there's some things that I'll go boom, 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 boom with my right hand.
Yeah.
And then keep the 2 and 4 over here.
Okay.
And then there's other stuff where you're just kind of like playing, and you're playing the kick and then the hi-hat, and then, you know, all that with comedy and the boa and the sunglasses to do Elton John.
This is something that definitely needs to be seen.
It's a great show. So we're kind of like we're working the bugs out in these smaller places.
Okay.
And yeah, that show will be playing some bigger places. I'm playing keys with Stevie Ray Vaughan tribute with Pete Vincent. So that's cool. We just did a show at Old Town Blues Club. I'm doing enough to keep me busy, man. It's
Yes, you are.
It's nice because I have the solo gigs on guitar or piano, you know, with and without tracks. I'll do old school, you know, Dylan, Neil Young kind of thing, sometimes with a harmonica around my neck. But tracks have become more acceptable, I think, these days, both from, I think, a budget concern from the venues, be it a country club that has more money than restaurants generally, but still, I have custom produced tracks that were done by a good friend of mine who used to be my music partner. He's off in Texas now doing his thing. But they're really good quality tracks, so you sound like a full band.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think it's hokey, you know, because you kind of feel like a karaoke singer up there. But I think offering guitar and or piano or something makes it a little more authentic and less karaoke-ish. You know, no offense to karaoke singers, but I mean, because there's a lot of singers out there that are working doing that. You know, you see, and you've probably interviewed some guys that do. They're sax players, and they do the track act.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it just seems to be...
Jason Weber, for one.
Yeah, Jason, I was going to say, I thought I saw that one. It's become perfectly acceptable.
Yes, it has.
You know, and in a lot of cases, from owning a restaurant and being on that side, it's way better. No offense to drummers, guitar players, no offense, but those instruments are loud in a restaurant. A piano, not so much.
Okay.
You know, tracks that you can control, band's too loud. You know,
there you go.
Pull the fader down or turn the knob.
There you go. Well, I think there's plus and minus to that, you know,
Very much so.
and as you alluded to, becoming more acceptable to have tracks, because I can recall a few years before the pandemic, for whatever reason, maybe because of covering someone, had to have tracks, and very professionally done tracks. Amazing response from the audience, but criticism from other musicians, like, hey, they're cheating. You know what I mean? The audience was loving it. People were still dancing. You know what I mean? But then I won't mention this venue because it's not too far from where we are. But then after the pandemic, I sort of wandered into that venue and I see everybody's got tracks. It's like, well, 1 minute we're scolded for tracks and the next minute everybody's got tracks. Like, it's kind of a paradox, but I think the pandemic sort of made it necessary to one extent. So
here's what it is, though, I think, with that. Is early on when tracks first started, people were using really bad karaoke tracks or really poorly produced home recording tracks. My first experience with tracks they were knocked down perfect, mastered, same bass patches, same drum patches, and just very little supporting stuff. Maybe a keyboard pad, maybe a little chicka with a guitar and stuff. So they're very user friendly.
Right.
And you know, we have versions where we could use them, and man, I keep pulling this. Sorry. Where, you know, we can strip out different instruments and stuff. But I think if they sound good, you know, that's the key. And now they have some really good karaoke tracks. Right. You know, that are quite often, I think, sometimes the actual recordings, the record companies license them for karaoke tracks.
Yeah, there is a certain legal element to it.
There's people that tell me, though, just do, you know, and there's some nights where I'll just do a show with no tracks at all, and people are like, that's way better, you know, that's you doing that, you know. But I think if you produce the tracks, or if you just kind of like just learn how to use them, and the other key to it, and the success that I've had with it, play the hits. You know, cats are like, oh, I want to do original music, I want to do jazz, I want to do this. That's cool, but there's only a certain amount, you know, of audience that likes that. So I kind of mix it up. I'll do some standards, I'll do some jazz and pop standards, but you do the hits over the decades, and that's what people like. That's what they like to hear. Sure. You know, and then that's the way they're like, you're so good. It's like, no, I'm really not. You just really like the songs.
Yeah, it's all about planning. There's a lot of planning that goes into it. But Danny, you have such an amazing background, so many areas that you've touched, so many people that you've touched, and you earlier talked about, you know, a couple of little tidbits that you'd advise other musicians coming up, like one, learning the drums in addition to your other instruments and a few other things. But could you give us a recap on that? What would you say to that up and coming musician that wants to just have success at what they do? What would you say to them?
Listen. You know, musicians get caught up in mastering the instrument. You have to practice every day. Okay. You know, students that I teach, and it's like, oh, well, she practices, every Wednesday, every Friday. No, pick it up every day.
Every day.
Even if it's for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, do something. Go into it with a mission.
Okay.
Know what you're practicing that day. But I would say listening, because that's what the audience is doing, and listen and learn. Don't be afraid to ask questions, and try to always play with guys that are better than you.
Okay.
If you're the worst, or if you're the least talented musician on the bandstand, that's going to make you better. Go to the jam sessions, but don't try to jump into a pro jam situation. Go to the intermediate jams. Go to the open mics, because those are the more of the amateur level people that are getting up to sing for the first time.
Okay.
People that have the karaoke bar experience. But listen to learn, ask questions, and study.
Wonderful.
Study. Find a teacher, or find, everything's out there on YouTube now.
Yes, it is.
But sitting down with another person teaching you face to face, there's no replacement for that.
Okay.
And just find an instrument that you like to play.
Okay.
But play it percussively.
There you go. Danny, thank you so much
Dante,
for coming to Viewphonic TV. We really appreciate you. So blessings to you in your career.
Likewise.
Thank
you,
you.
Dante.